Picture this: a crowded train in Tokyo. A toddler starts to melt down, and the mother does nothing. No yelling, no bribing with snacks, no desperate whispers of, "Stop it, right now." She just waits, calmly, like she knows something the rest of the world doesn't. That mother was mine, and that toddler was me. I did not know at the time that what she was doing had a name. I did not know it was a philosophy practiced across Japan for generations. I just knew that my mother had a particular kind of stillness when I was struggling, a quality of waiting that felt, even to a small child, less like indifference and more like trust. It took me until my 30s to understand what she was actually doing, and once I understood it, I could not unsee it in every interaction between a parent and a child I have witnessed since. Japanese children are consistently among the most self-disciplined, emotionally regulated kids in the world. Not because they are punished into obedience, not because Japanese parents are stricter or colder or more demanding, because of a parenting philosophy so quietly powerful that most Western parents have never heard of it. By the end of this video, you will have 3 tools that Japanese parents have used for generations. Tools my mother used on me without ever once explaining them, that I only fully understood when I started looking back. The first concept is called shitsuke, written in Japanese with 2 characters, one meaning body, one meaning beauty. Literally translated, to attach beauty to the body. Not punishment, not control. Beauty. Shitsuke is the art of raising a child who wants to behave. Not because they are afraid of consequences, but because good behavior has become part of who they are. In Western parenting, the model is largely reactive. The child misbehaves. The parent responds. You yell, you take something away, you send them to their room, and for a few minutes it works. Then it happens again and again, because the reaction treats the symptom, not the cause. Japanese parents, in my experience of being raised by one, operate from a completely different question. Not, how do I stop this behavior, but what skill does my child not yet have? Because children do not misbehave to make your life difficult. They misbehave because they are missing something. Emotional regulation, patience, the words to express what they are feeling. These are not things children are born with. They are things that have to be taught. And the moment you shift from punishing the behavior to teaching the missing skill, the whole dynamic changes. I remember being frustrated as a child, genuinely, overwhelmingly frustrated, and my mother not fixing it for me, not removing the source of the frustration, not telling me it did not matter, waiting with me while I found my way through it. At the time, it felt, occasionally, like she was not paying attention. Now I understand she was paying very close attention. She was watching for what I was missing and teaching it quietly without making a lesson of it. Which brings me to the second concept, mimamoru, to watch over while protecting. My mother on that train in Tokyo was practicing mimamoru, the Japanese belief that children grow stronger when adults resist the urge to intervene at every moment of difficulty. In the West, we are trained to fix things quickly. Child struggles, we step in. Child cries, and we solve it. Child fails, and we rescue. And we do it from love. But the unintended consequence is a message the child receives without words. You cannot handle this on your own. Japanese parents step back and observe, not coldly, not without care. With a specific kind of trust, the trust that the child has the capacity to work through hard things if given the space to try. My mother had this in a form I did not appreciate until I was an adult. She would watch me struggle with something, a social situation, a difficult task, a moment of real frustration, and she would not rush in. She would be present. She was always present. But she would wait. And when I managed it, even partially, even imperfectly, she did not make a big production of it. She just moved on, as if she had never doubted that I would find my way through. That quiet confidence, repeated across years, does something to a child. Developmental psychologists call this productive struggle, and it is one of the strongest predictors of emotional resilience in children that we have found. The child who is allowed to sit in discomfort just long enough to try, and who occasionally succeeds, builds a kind of confidence that cannot be given. It can only be earned through the experience of doing something hard. So the next time your child is frustrated, struggling on the edge of a meltdown, before you step in, pause. Give them 10 seconds. Watch what they do with those 10 seconds. You may be surprised. Now, here is where most people's assumptions about Japanese parenting go wrong. Because when people hear that Japanese children are disciplined and calm, they assume the parenting must be strict, cold, rigid. The opposite is true. The third concept is called ame. Loosely translated, the feeling of being able to depend completely on another person's love. Japanese parenting in the early years is extraordinarily close. Co-sleeping is common. Physical closeness is constant. The child is never made to feel alone in the world. And this is not indulgence. This is the foundation. My mother was not a distant parent. She was one of the closest people in my world, especially when I was small. The warmth was unconditional and total. What neuroscience now tells us is that a child who feels deeply, securely attached to their caregiver develops a nervous system that is more capable of self-regulation. When a child knows in their body that love is not conditional on behavior, that they are not loved more when they are good and less when they are difficult, they do not need to act out to test that love. They do not need to push limits to find the edge of it. The security becomes the soil from which self-discipline grows. And then, gradually, as the child develops, independence is quietly encouraged. Responsibility is added small piece by small piece, not because the warmth has been withdrawn, because the child is ready. Looking back at my own childhood, I can see this sequence clearly. The closeness came first, the expectation followed, and the expectation never felt like pressure because the foundation was already solid. Have you ever heard that Japanese children clean their own classrooms? Every day, no janitors, no adult supervision required. That is not an accident, and it is not about cleanliness. It is about identity. In Japan, children as young as 4 are given small daily responsibilities, setting the table, packing their own school bag, cleaning up after lunch, not because the parents need the help, because these small rituals, repeated every single day, build something in the child's sense of who they are. They begin to see themselves as capable, as responsible, as people who contribute. An identity, once formed, drives behavior more powerfully than any rule ever could. My mother did not give me a list of rules. She gave me routines, small daily things that were simply expected without drama or reward. And over time, those things became who I was, not because I was told to be that way, because I had practiced being that way every day until it stopped being practice and just became me. This is why rules alone so often fail. Rules require enforcement. Identity does not. A child who sees themselves as someone who takes care of their things will take care of their things. A child who has only ever been told to take care of their things will take care of them when someone is watching. The difference is everything. So here's your practical starting point. Pick one small daily ritual to introduce this week. It does not have to be significant. Setting the table before dinner, packing their own bag before school, a specific moment of quiet before bed. Do it every day, without pressure, without reward, without making it a negotiation. Just expectation, delivered calmly, consistently, every single day. Give it 3 weeks. Watch what starts to shift. Not in what your child does, in who your child starts to become. Shitsuke, Mimamoru, Amai, prevention, trust, connection. My mother never sat me down and explained any of this. She never told me she was raising me according to a philosophy. She just raised me with patience, with presence, with a quality of stillness I spent years trying to understand. I understand it now, and I think if you are a parent, it is worth understanding too, because the children who are the most capable, the most regulated, the most genuinely confident are rarely the ones who were pushed the hardest. They are the ones who were trusted the earliest. If something in this video resonated with how you were raised or changed how you are thinking about raising your own children, I would like to hear about it in the comments.